come out of a personal situation that I've been facing in the last months after I hurt my back in the month of Tammuz, and Baruch Hashem, slowly refuah is coming, and it has set off my mind on certain avenues in relation to this week's parasha of Vayishlach. When we continue with hearing the story of Yaakov Avinu, who in last week's parasha we saw how to flee the hatred of his brother Esav, Yaakov went to Padan Aram, to the home of his wily, treacherous uncle, his mother's brother, Lavan, and we read the whole story of how this who comes across through the narrative of the Torah as being a very young man who is working hard and building a house and marrying his wife and his Rachel and Leah and all the things that happen, very energetic. And after 20 years of service of Lavan, we left Yaakov Avinu now finally coming back home with this great entourage of his family and his flocks, his sheep, his cattle, and coming into Eretz Yisrael. Well, now he has to confront Esav, his brother. Lavan is on a entirely different plane. Not the danger of Lavan. Lavan was plotting to destroy everything, but he was doing it through playing with people's minds, through trickery, through spin, through presenting things in the way he wanted people to perceive them. And Yaakov had to learn to deal with that, and he came out of it. But now he's facing a dire physical threat, the threat of a brother that hits him so much that he wants to exterminate him and all his family. And as Yaakov Avinu comes from up north in wherever, Turkey, Syria, down into the promised land of his fathers, he has to cross over the river. And the Torah in our parasha has us see how Yaakov Avinu is transporting all of his family across the river into Eretz Yisrael, the river Yabok. And after he's taken everybody across, all of a sudden he remembers that he left something behind. And the Torah tells us he was left behind alone in the camp. And our rabbis tell us that he went back to fetch something. In those days, before they had plastic, the disposable vessels were made of pottery, which kept on breaking, a very cheap product. And our rabbi said he went back to collect some little flask or something. What was this flask? Well, our rabbis teach us that this shows how the righteous tzaddik values every penny he has. He wants to bring the most out of it, to utilize every penny in the service of God. But actually what was in this flask is as follows. When Noah wanted to find out if the flood had subsided, he sent out the dove. And the dove finally came back with a sprig of an olive tree and brought it to the ark, and that way Noah knew that the flood had finished. And it's very significant because, of course, Noah is the father of the 70 nations. And Noah took the sprig and he squeezed the olive into a little flask. And the oil was in this flask, and Noah gave it over to his son Shem. Wow. And Shem gave it over to Aver, who gave it over to Avram and Yitzchak, and that's how it got into the hands of Yaakov. And that was the flask that Yaakov had to go back to the camp to fetch. And just to, before we continue with the next part of this journey, to just follow through the end of the history of the flask, Yaakov gave it to his son Levi, who gave it to Amram, who gave it to Moshe, who gave it to Yoshua, who brought it into Eretz Yisrael, and eventually came to David HaMelech. And when Shlomo built the Beis HaMikdash, he put the flask in the Beis HaMikdash, and this was the flask that the Kohanim discovered on Hanukkah. It was this with the flask that brought the miracle of Hanukkah.
Come on, wow.
And thus we see the universal significance of the menorah relating to Noach, who's the father of the 70 nations. Hanukkah is not only about Jews and Israel, it's about the whole world and the spread of the the 7 laws of the Bnei Noach, representing the 7 branches of the menorah to the 70 nations who are included in the menorah. And that's why we read the Psalm of Lam Natseach, according to the shape of the menorah. Lam Natseach, Psalm 67, is the most international of our Tehillim. It calls on all of the nations to join and praise God together. So we see that Hanukkah has a universal significance. And it was precisely this episode that led to Yaakov's confrontation with the angel, which is what I'm going to talk about tonight. It says that Yaakov was left behind in the camp. And a man struggled with him until the rise of the dawn, and he saw that he could not overcome him, and he touched him in the cup of his hip, the buttock, and he caught the hip of Jacob in struggling with him. And he said, "Send me away, for the dawn is rising." And he said, "I shall not send you away unless you bless me." And he said to him, "What is your name?" He said, "Jacob." He said, "Not Jacob shall your name be called, it shall be called Israel, for you have struggled with angels and you have struggled with men, and you have overcome." And Jacob asked, he said, "Tell me your name." He said, "Why do you ask my name?" He blessed him there, and Jacob called the name of that place Peniel, because I have seen God face to face, and my soul has been saved. Or I've seen the angels face to face, my soul has been saved. And the sun shone upon him when he was crossing Peniel, and he was limping on his hip, on his thigh. And for that reason, the children of Israel will not eat the gid hanasher, the gid, the sinew that slipped, that moved, which was on the rounded part of the buttock until this day, for he touched the rounded part of the buttock of Jacob on the gid hanasher. The gid hanasher is the sciatic nerve, and it is estimated that some 80% of the population at some time in their life will suffer from back trouble. And there are various different kinds of back trouble. One of the most common kinds of back trouble is in the lower spine, in what are called the lumbar vertebrae of the spine. And this is precisely where the angel got Yaakov Avinu. And this is the subject I would like to discuss tonight, and to find gleanings from our Kabbalah, from our sages, of how we can understand and make personal this whole subject. Because this is clearly a very critical subject, because we see that the Yaakov Avinu of last week's parasha and the Yaakov Avinu after he comes into Israel are two different people. They have two different names. There's Yaakov and there's Israel. And Israel is limping. He gets healed, the sun heals him, but he starts off with this terrible link. And my God, I can tell you how excruciating it is. As you know, if those of you who know what I'm talking about know the agony that you can go, where you cannot walk, you go out of your mind, and you wonder if there's any future, and all of a sudden you become so completely broken and humiliated and devastated by how delicate the whole thing really is, how completely delicate and miraculous, and how we abused ourselves, and how we forgot it, how we were ungrateful, and all of a sudden we're landed there, and suddenly we have to relearn and learn and interiorize all of these lessons. See, the gid hanosher, the sciatic nerve, is emerging from what is called the fourth lumbar vertebra. The fourth lumbar vertebra is way down at the lower part of the spine. Out of it, on both sides, emerge a nerve which actually divides subsequently into 5 branches, and they spread all the way from the hip, down the thigh, down the shin, all the way to the foot and the leg. And somebody who suffers from this problem is likely to feel the pain shooting from the back down to the leg. And one of the main reasons for the pain is because sometimes the place where the nerve is emerging from the lumbar vertebra is getting squeezed by, as it exits, an enormous pressure is getting on this nerve. It may become inflamed, and it can make one's ability to move around completely circumscribed. And if you think about it, the human body is such a miracle of God's creation, such a miracle of intricate engineering and planning design. It's impossible to stand if one is closed or open in the wrong place. You know, let's say the average person weighs 150 pounds, 160, 70 pounds. Probably about 2/3 of the person's weight is in the upper part of the body. And all of that weight is all concentrated on the lower vertebrae of the back. And the engineering is so subtle and so delicate that if it gets thrown out of alignment even slightly, it can lead to this tremendous pain. And Yaakov Avinu, you can imagine the children of Israel saw this. Our Tata is screaming in agony. How can we possibly ever eat that part of an animal again? Al-Kain Loyo, the children of Israel will not eat that. They couldn't tolerate it. The Kabbalah tells us that the three Avot, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, correspond to the arms and the torso of the human form. Avram, kindness, the right arm outstretched. Yitzchak, discipline, severity on the left arm. And Yaakov, the heart, the balance, tiferet. But none of it is of any significance if there's no children, if there's no offspring. That's why we are the Bnei Yisrael. We are the children of Israel because we are the continuation of the Avot. It's no use having the Avot unless they have children. And the children is the whole children of Israel who spread the knowledge of God throughout the world. We are God's witnesses. And the Kabbalah teaches that the children are the Sfirot of Netzach, Hod, and Yesod, which are on the level of the two legs and the organ of the procreation. And so the point where the Malach got Yaakov Avinu was precisely, he wanted to stop the influence coming from the upper part, the Avot, down to the Banim, the children. And that's precisely where it gets you. It's all very well if your mind is working, your arms are working, but you cannot walk from A to B, you can't get anywhere. The Kabbalah teaches us, Rabbi Nachman brings out in Likutei Moharan Torah Samach Vov in the first Chelik, 66 in the first part of Likutei Moharan, that everything we do in life starts off with a thought in potential, but we have to actualize it. And the Sfirot of Chesed, Gevura, and Tiferet are the Sfirot of influence, of creativity. But all the creativity in the world will not help you if you cannot actually materialize and actualize your project, which is the work of the legs. You've got to get your idea from A to B, from thought and dream to actuality. And that is the function of the legs. And that is precisely where the Malach touched Yaakov. He wanted to make it more difficult for Yaakov's influence to come down into the world. Now all of this goes right back to the Nachash, the serpent, because Yaakov is struggling against Esau, and Yaakov is the reincarnation of Adam, and Esau is the incarnation of